Welcome back. I'm hanging out with the beautiful Casey McGrath, and we are going to talk about how to draw the female eyes. And your eyes are just extraordinary. They're beautiful, and it's going to help us out today with learning how to draw them. So first thing we need to do, we need to figure out the placement of the eyes and where those eyes are going to land on the head that we constructed in the previous video. If you haven't seen it yet, you should go back and watch it. A lot of times when people draw eyes, they get this idea that the eyes are way up higher than they really are, and we think of the eyes as one of all these features. You've got the eyes, the nose, lips, chin, sometimes facial hair, and because the eyes are above all of that, people make the mistake of drawing the eyes way up in the forehead here. When truth be told, the eyes are actually halfway from the top of the head to the bottom of the chin. That's where the eye line is. So you can see here, top of the head, bottom of the chin, the eyes right in the middle of that. So all we need to do lightly, we want to draw a line, top of the head, bottom of the chin, not in the middle of the circle, but in the middle of the head overall. In fact, we can lightly erase this here. Something like that, and that is where the eyes are going to go. Sometimes when you look at the head, especially if it's someone that has hair, obviously not me, sometimes when you look at the human head, it seems like the eyes are so much higher because when you look at the face, when you have the hairline that comes down to here, it just seems like the eyes are higher. But when you're constructing the head, from the top of the head to the bottom of the chin, you really want those eyes in the center like so. Next up, when you're looking at the head straight on, the eyes are actually 5 eyes across. So you've got one eye space from, if you're looking at the head straight on like this, you've got one eye space from the edge of the eye to the edge of the head here. You've got exactly one eye space in between the eyes, and then you've got one eye space from the edge of this eye to the edge of the head over here. So the way that we can plan that out is we can make these little, I call them niches, I don't know what else you would call them, but you have to figure out 5 equal spaces. Now this is a little bit tricky because it's not as easy as just splitting it here and here, because that doesn't make 5 spaces, that makes 4 spaces, and we don't want to do that. We need 5 spaces. So you could pull out a ruler and you could figure it out, but that would take all the fun out of drawing. So I just kind of guesstimate. I kind of look at this line across here and I say, well, okay, something like that, something like that, and something like that. That looks like about the same space here. This is the space for the eye. There's the space in the middle. There's that space there, and there is that space there. When you are drawing the eyes, when you're putting the eyes together, you definitely don't want to put the eyes too close together unless you're drawing manga. Then it's kind of fun for whatever reason in that style. But any other style, when you put the eyes too close together, it just makes your characters look a little bit goofy. But when you are drawing, especially when you're drawing female characters, sometimes you can get away with putting the eyes a little bit farther apart, and that gives kind of a feline quality to them. Now that we've got the spacing for the eyes on the head, now we're going to talk about actually drawing the eyes. So what not to do, I was told when I was a kid, the way that you draw the eye is you draw a football shape, and you draw an iris in the middle, you draw the pupil in the middle of that, and then you draw perfect eyelashes radiating out like so.
This eye looks exactly like the boss in Kirby's Dream Land on the Game Boy, because it's just a cloud with an eye and little yellow spikes all around there, and it hits you with lightning. But its name was Krakow, not wrong though.
When drawing the eye, I'm going to get a little bit more exaggerated with this eye, and actually I'm going to draw eyes kind of similar to Casey's. We're going to get a little bit more Asian with it, a little bit more exotic. So let's say we're drawing the eye. I'm going to draw an eye, if you're looking at someone, an eye that is on the left side. So what you want to do, you do want to have a little bit of an arch on the top, but it's a lot more flat on top. So let's say we do something kind of like this, and then you bring it down towards the tear duct. So here's something that's very important. Again, a lot of the tips that we're going over today, this is going to be tips that are going to help you to invent your own characters. This is really good if you're getting into the world of advertising where you've got to make different comps. Storyboarding for film and animation, comic books, manga, all of this stuff, you want to be able to create your own characters. So what's important to know, your tear ducts are on the insides of the eyes, not on the outside. So if you look at Casey here, see how it tapers into the tear ducts on either sides of the eye? That's very important because it's always funny to me when you have I always see amateur artists, they draw their characters where they draw someone crying and they have the tear ducts going doink, doink, doink down the face like that. And also, I think there's even, I think when guys go to prison, I think they get the tear duct, the black, and doesn't that mean they killed someone? And as many tears as they have, that's as many people as they, yeah, anyway, maybe we'll edit that out. But anyway, what's weird about that is your tear ducts are on the insides of your eyes. You don't cry over here unless your head is over like this. And then sometimes everything is all about body language and posture. So if someone's crying walking down the street, they usually have their head kind of down like this. They're feeling down in the dumps. And then the tears come from here and they go to the lowest point of the eyelid. And that way, when you go up to someone, you say, "What's wrong?" And then they lift their head up like this. Then, the tears look like they're coming from the middle. And they're like, "I just got dumped," right? So sometimes it looks like they come from the middle, but it's all about body language. Usually when people walk down the street after getting dumped, they're usually not like walking proud and like holding their head high like this, right? So sometimes it does depend on which way you're holding your head. But the tear ducts are on the inside. Then for the eye under here, same thing. We're going to curve on this side, but then it's a little bit flatter on the bottom. Something like that. Actually, let me do that a little bit better. Let me do that again, but better. Kind of sort of like so, and that gives us the basic shape of the eye. Next up, we need to talk about eyelashes. But before we get into the fun wispies that go out like this, the first thing that you can do, naturally, our eyelashes are almost always thicker on the top lids than they are on the bottom lids. So what we can do to emphasize that is we can just make this whole area thicker and darker. So this happens naturally, but also when women are putting makeup on, I'll emphasize those lashes on top just a little bit more. So that's the first thing we can do. Now we get to add the fun wispies, but before we do, I need to talk about the art of drawing things random. So to illustrate how to draw things random, I want to share with you, when I was in college, when I was first learning how to paint, I had an oil painting class, and for the final project, we got to paint whatever we wanted. And of course, what did I want to do? I wanted to paint the Millennium Falcon flying through space. So what I did is I took my canvas and I painted the canvas black. And then what I did, I had a jar of white paint and I had a little detail brush, and I dipped my brush in the white paint, and I started adding stars, and I wanted to make stars random all across this canvas. So what I did, I put a star here, and I put a star here, and I put a star here, and I didn't want to have them in any kind of order. I didn't want it to be a perfect grid like, you know that game that you play in middle school?
Oh, Connect Four?
No, not that. What's the game where you...
Perfection.
No, it's got the it's like the grid, and you connect the boxes, and for every box you make, you put your initials in that. You ever do that?
Oh, yeah.
You know what I mean? And then as soon as you connect a box, you get, and whoever makes the most boxes is the winner. Did you ever do that? Mm-mm. No. I don't know what that game was called, but you definitely don't want it to look like that. You don't want it to be perfect, but just kind of randomly everywhere, and that is actually not random. Here's what I should have done back then, what I know now, what I didn't know then, but what I know now. So what I should have done, I should have taken my canvas, of course, paint the canvas black so that it looks like it's in the far reaches of space. Then what I should have done, I should have taken my white paint with my little detail brush. What I should have done, I actually should have closed my eyes at first, dip it in, and randomly, and I should have put a cluster F of stars randomly here, and then maybe not as much here. Okay, got it, good. Let's do it again. Closing my eyes and randomly. Okay. So the idea being this. I'm trying to be as random as I can. So the idea is this: when you go outside and it's nighttime in the summer and there isn't a cloud in the sky and you see all the stars everywhere, when you look at the sky, you probably look over here and say, wow, look at all those stars, that's amazing. And then you might look over here and, yeah, there's some stars over here too, maybe not as much. And you might look over here and be like, yeah, I don't see any stars over there. It's random. So you want to kind of infuse that. You want to have areas where there's a lot of stars. You want to have areas where there's some stars, and you want to have areas where there's no stars. I totally feel like, oh, I just want to put one here and here. You know, I want to put one here. But you know what? I'm going to let it go because it's random. Now, the next thing that you want to do, because it's stars, stars are not all the same size. Some of them are bigger, some of them are smaller, some of them are closer to us, they advance and appear larger. Some of them are farther away, they recede and appear smaller. Also, some of them are twinkling and a little bit brighter. So we need to have some randomness. So I'm just going to randomly pick a couple of these. I'm going to make a couple a little bit bigger, just because. Some of them are going to, and again, I'm not trying to space out the ones that are bigger. I'm trying to make it random. Maybe there's two that are really close to each other right here. Maybe these two are a little bit closer, but I'm trying to make it random so you can't really get any sense of order. One right here. I mentioned some of the stars are twinkling. So let's grab a select few and let's go bing. Bang. Now, do you see how this totally feels random? This feels like a nebula in outer space. Do you see how this looks like a close-up of a Band-Aid? Right? This is how you truly draw things random, and we want to infuse that into our drawing. Here's what we're going to do. We are going to apply this technique with the eyelashes. So instead of doing the perfect eyelashes here, where each one is the same distance apart, what we're going to do, we are going to do a select few, and we're going to try to make it as random as we can. So I'm going to start here. I'm going to draw the fun, wispy eyelashes. So let's say we've got one here, and then maybe we've got one here and one here. Now check this out. These two are a little bit closer than this one was. But you know what? Some of your eyelashes are a little bit closer. Also, this one looks like it's a little bit longer than this one. But sometimes your eyelashes are different lengths. So then maybe we've got another two here. And look at this. Oh, these two, they're almost touching. But that's fine. That's random. In fact, maybe we've got three close together, and maybe we'll have, maybe there's two here. Those are crossing over. But you know what? Sometimes your lashes do cross over. We're trying to make it random. So the reason why, when you look at these lashes, these just look like lashes. There's no order to it. There's no sense of order. They're not robot lashes. So when people look at it, they just see eyelashes. Now, here's the reason why it's important. This has so much order to it. Let's say you're walking down the street in downtown Royal Oak. And let's say as you're walking down an intersection, you look down the street and they have all these trees that are, they're all the same tree. They're the same kind of tree. You can tell they were planted at the same time because they're all exactly the same size, you know, going down in perspective. Let's say one of those trees gets yanked because it's interrupting the power lines or something like that. So one tree is missing. When you're walking down the street and you look and you see all these trees, where do your eyes go immediately? Casey, where do your eyes go immediately?
To the gap.
To the gap, to the tree that's missing, because we can't help it when we're just programmed to find things that are wrong. We're trying to fix things all the time. So when something's missing, it's where our eyes go immediately. So if you're watching this at home and you're OCD, I apologize. This is going to freak you out a little bit. But watch what happens when I go to this, this eye right here. What happens when I just get rid of one of these eyelashes here? Does that bother you, James? Are you okay with that?
I'll live.
You'll live? Okay, it's kind of freaking me out because there's one that's missing. And if you did a drawing like this, people would probably come up and say, oh, nice drawing. Yeah, you're missing an eyelash right here, which is really a weird thing to say about someone's drawing. You're missing an eyelash? What? Because if we got rid of one of these eyelashes, you would never know because there's already a randomness to it. So this is how we want to approach here. Just because I know you guys, it's freaking you out, you can rest easy. There is your eyelash perfectly in its place the way it was supposed to be. So we're going to go ahead, we're going to add eyelashes on the bottom. Now the bottom eyelashes, just naturally, they're not as long, so we can make them a little bit shorter, and we'll go ahead and do that now, but we're still trying to add a randomness. Next up is the iris. So the iris, when you look at the eye is usually covered by the top part of the lid. So if you look at Casey's eyes here, do you see how there's the circle of the iris, but the eye is covered by the upper lashes slightly? So when you're drawing this in here, if you put the eye in the creamy center of this eye shape, it just looks like, oh my gosh, right? It's just like, ugh. So obviously you don't want to do that. So what I like to do, I like to have the iris, it's slightly covered like so. Let me make these just a little bit thicker. It's slightly covered like so. Now, it is true the pupil is always in the center of the iris, and that pupil is always black regardless of the color of the eye. So we don't want to just leave it this little white spot right here. So I'm going to go ahead and put in that darkness there. Now, what you'll notice is I have a little bit of a space right here underneath the eye. And what that is, sometimes you will see a little bit of the white of the eye underneath the iris. But what that really is we have a thickness to the lower eyelid. And that thickness, usually the eyelid is kind of curving under like this. And we can see that little pink thickness of the skin of our lower eyelid. And it's so light that next to the white of the eye, I'm going to draw it with red just because I don't want you guys to do this, but there's a thickness of that lower lid kind of like so, and then here's the fun eye guts right here. If you draw that in, it's almost like too much and you're putting a line in there. There is no dark line separating that. It's just this really light pink color next to the white of the eye. So we want to get rid of that. We're not going to draw that. And what this will also do, this helps make the eyes look bigger. And a lot of times that's why we're wearing eyeliner in the first place. Who here wears eyeliner? I mean, come on, right? So even guys, sometimes if we're trying to look cool like this, or if guys are in a play, we wear what's called guy liner. But what eyeliner really does, it emphasizes the outer edge of the eyes, and it actually makes the eyes look a lot bigger. And you can see here, this is a good example of that, how big the eyes look there. It just looks awesome by emphasizing the outside of the eye. So that's why I've got this space here. Next up, we're going to talk about the iris, the color of the eye, and the rules are always the same regardless of the color of the eye, whether it's a blue eye, green eye, brown eye, doesn't matter. First of all, the lightest part of the color of the eye, and when I say the color of the eye, I'm talking about the iris, the brightest part is going to be the highlight, and usually the face is lit by a single dominant light source, and so you've got this highlight that's going to be pretty bright anywhere, usually over on one side or the other. So we've got our highlight there. Then for the color of the eye, I'm going to make this a green eye just because I have a green marker. The next lightest part, this is going to be the brightest part, but the next lightest part is actually going to be kitty corner from where that highlight is. The reason why the pupil is almost, if you can think of it like a glass marble, what happens is light hits here, it makes a highlight, but then the light refracts around the eye, and then we get this area here. It's not as bright as the highlight, but the brightest part of the eye, if you ever look at someone's eye, especially if it's got really good lighting, if you look at the brightest part opposite where that highlight is, if it's a green eye, you're going to see really bright green right here. If it's a brown eye, you'll see almost like a reddish color that's kind of illuminated, it's refracted over on this side here. Next up, usually the eye is a little bit darker around the edge. Then what happens, the darkest part of the eye is usually up top, and what it is, it's the shadow coming down like this. Here's the eyelashes and the thickness of the eyelid. You've got this darkness right here, and this is all, even if they have really light colored eyes, this is all really dark right here because it's a shadow of the thickness of the eye. But guess what? That's actually really cool because that also helps emphasize the highlight right here. And then there's one more thing. We've got the basic color that's going on here. So we've got kind of a medium tone here, but the eye is always a little bit lighter right around where the pupil starts. So I'll try to erase this here so you can kind of see it. So if you kind of look there, you can kind of see how it's a little bit lighter right before the pupil starts right there. So that is how you want to put your eyes together. A couple more tips on this. One thing that you can do, most eyes have a crease right above the upper eyelid. So you have a crease that looks something kind of like that. It's not, we're not just drawing a line, it's a shape, but it's just a really long shape like this. Not to be confused with the eyebrows. Now, not everyone has that crease, depending on what ethnicity you are. My sister is adopted from Korea, and she has very beautiful eyes as well. She actually does not have the crease. Is it better to draw the crease or not draw the crease? It actually doesn't matter. It just depends on who you're drawing. It can be beautiful with it, and it can be beautiful without it. We talked about placement. We've got one eye space here. We've got one eye space here. So I'm going to go ahead, I'm going to draw eyes on either side. Here we go. I've got the basic eye shape here. I've got the thickness of the upper lashes. I'm going to go ahead and draw the random wispies. Shorter ones on the bottom. All right, here is the iris on either side. Here is the highlight. I've got the, let me make that highlight a little bigger. Here is the pupil. By the way, the pupil is always in the creamy center of the overall iris. If you move this, that's really creepy. If you actually see the pupil move inside, that would never happen. So if you ever see that, I think they do that sometimes in those scary Asian horror films just to play with your mind. The only time it's cool to do that is Powerpuff Girls. Actually, they move their pupils inside their irises, and for some reason it's cute when it happens with them, but otherwise not good. Here is our highlight. Here is the darkness above inside the pupil. And here's the refracted light here. A little bit of tone. And here is the crease above the upper eyelid. Get that over just a little bit more. Something like so. So there is your female eyes, but real quick, everything that I said not to do, we're going to go ahead over on Rongo and we're going to go ahead and do that. So one of the things that I said to put the eyes exactly in the middle from the top of the head to the bottom of the head. I'm not going to do that. Let's go ahead and make the mistake of putting the eyes a little bit too high. Also, I'm going to ignore 5 eyes across. So we're going to go ahead and draw those football shapes like this. I'm going to put pupils in the middle, iris in the middle, and then I'm going to draw the perfect lashes radiating out like so. Now, there's one more thing that you don't want to do when you are drawing the eyes, and that is, I usually say this to a classroom, and I look around the room, and usually I can tell there's bags under everyone's eyes. I'm sure there's bags under my eyes right now, and what that means is you need to get more sleep, but you don't actually want to draw lines like this. A lot of times I'll see students draw an extra line here and an extra line here, thinking they're doing it a favor because it's more detail. When you do that, you are suddenly adding 40 years to whoever you're drawing, which is really creepy. If you're drawing a 4-year-old kid, you add these lines and suddenly your kid is 44. Really creepy. You don't want to add these in because as soon as you put a line here and a line here, that looks like someone took a Sharpie and just carved a line here and here. So you really don't see that. Maybe if you really wanted to make it look like someone was sick or drowsy, you could add something like that. But otherwise, less is more. All right, that is basically how you want to draw the female eyes. In the next video, we are going to talk about the secret to drawing noses. And who doesn't want to draw a better nose? I'll see you in the next video.